AWANI tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. Booster interval for all vaccines shortened to 3 months. And where did we go wrong in response to flood crisis? That's coming up. The booster interval for recipients of Pfizer and AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines has been shortened to 3 months compared to 6 months before. Health Minister Kari Jamaluddin said the appointments will be given in stages based on age de-escalation and individuals' health status.
First choice, Pfizer. Second choice, AstraZeneca. Sinovac only if you are contraindicated against Pfizer and AstraZeneca. There's a very clear advisory that we recommend the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca for your booster shot, which now is 3 months. At least 3 months after your second dose of your primary series. Yeah.
He added that most Malaysian adults eligible for a booster shot are expected to receive the vaccine in the coming January and February. More vaccine administration centres, PPVs, will also be open to escalate vaccination, including the reinstruction of mega PPVs.
Due to the greater spread of the Omicron variant, the government has lifted a travel ban on 8 African countries, moving them to the high-risk countries list instead. 18 countries are now on this list.
Negara-negara berisiko tinggi kini ditambah kepada 18, iaitu United Kingdom, Amerika Syarikat, Australia, Arab Saudi, Norway, Perancis, Denmark, India, Canada, Nigeria, Afrika Selatan, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Mozambik, Namibia, Zimbabwe dan Malawi, yang mana pengembara yang kembali daripada negara-negara tersebut akan dipakai dengan peranti digital untuk memastikan bahawa mereka patuh kepada kuarantin yang diberi di rumah.
He strongly advised against travelling to these high-risk countries, while those returning from these countries must self-test every day during quarantine. He added that those planning to perform their Umrah or Hajj pilgrimage must receive a booster shot prior to their trip. Meanwhile, Khairi said the country will put on hold its efforts towards living with COVID-19 as an endemic and focus on fighting the Omicron variant.
We wanted to treat COVID as endemic. We publicly stated that, but that obviously now is on hold because of Omicron. If we get through the wave and the wave is not as severe as we expect it to be, then we can look at the road towards endemicity again. But for now, Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia's posture, the Ministry of Health's posture, is one of readiness, preparedness, and heightened readiness towards facing Omicron.
Khairi said there are now 306 suspected cases of the Omicron variant awaiting for whole genomic sequencing results for confirmation. Government agencies and elected representatives were under fire over the past week as they were accused of responding too slowly after the country's worst floods in years. Where did we go wrong in response to the crisis? We speak to Dr. Nurul Ashikin Mabawi of Parti Pejuang Tanah Air and researcher in flood risk management.
We call it the service area analysis. This is the very simple analysis in order for us to determine how many minutes we need for a certain flood depth. For example, if the flood depth is around 3 meters, how many minutes we need from one station to evacuate people in a certain area to the evacuation center. We don't even have that kind of calculation. Since we don't have specific scientific calculation, everything will be so ad hoc without proper preparation. So I think we need to improve that first. And in order to do that, the government offices need to implement certain technology, but I don't think it will cost a lot. And actually, Japan use this kind of analysis a lot. So we need to start using this kind of analysis and calculation. We must make it very scientific. And in terms of evacuation area, in order for us to reduce the risk, we can see that almost all PPS, Pusat Perpindahan Banjir Evacuation Center, crowded with people because we don't have any specific calculation for certain number of population, how many should evacuate to certain area. And we don't even have specific calculation for example, in 1 kilometer radius or 3 kilometer radius for every residential area, we need to have at least one evacuation center.
Nurul urged amendments to Directive Number 20 under the National Security Council to allow for a more proactive plan in disaster management.
I think our problem is because we highly depending on NATMA, Directive Number 20, actually Arahan Number 20. It is actually just a written order. It's not actually a flood act or flood regulation. And it must be activated by an executive order by the Prime Minister Office because NATMA is directly under Prime Minister Office. So just in case, in terms of flood incident, the Prime Minister Office issued the executive order quite late in order for them to activate the Directive Number 20. So it will result to the current situation lah. The NATMA will do their job quite late because NATMA in Directive Number 20 is just a coordinator for flood risk response. So they can't influence flood risk management. They can't influence any structural measures, flood benteng ke apa ke, they cannot influence that. They can just coordinate. But in order for them to coordinate that, we need to activate the Directive Number 20. So since we highly depending on Directive Number 20, just in case there is quite delay in terms of issuing the executive order, so it will result to the current problem lah. The flood response tu memang sangat lambat.
Segambut MP Hanayo urged the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission (MACC) to investigate development orders approved by DBKL involving flood retention ponds for possible abuse. Citing the Auditor General's Report 2019 Series 2, she said 6 flood retention ponds were alienated for development in Kuala Lumpur between 2015 and 2020.
Yeo said the plan to develop the retention ponds was among 943 developments approved by the city's mayor, which were inconsistent with the Kuala Lumpur City Plan 2020. For example, 3 of the ponds, the Batu Pond, Nanyang Pond and Delima Pond, were initially part of the Sungai Jinjang Flood Retention Pond project, which could store up to 2.5 million cubic meters of floodwater. Instead, they were alienated for development. She said this would affect the capacity of retention ponds and cripple operations under the Kuala Lumpur flood mitigation system.
Politicians and political operatives are no longer allowed to teach Islam in Selangor come January 1st. This is following a decree by Sultan of Selangor, Sultan Sharafuddin Idris Shah, barring Islam from being politicized and used as a political tool, especially in mosques and surau.
State Religious Council MAIS Chairman Tan Sri Abdul Aziz Muhammad Yusof said the council has been ordered by the Sultan to revoke teaching credentials given to political activists by December 31st. The move, he said, is to maintain the sanctity of Islam and to avoid its misuse by any party that can lead to slander, discord and division among Muslims. However, members of the State Executive Council who hold the Islamic Affairs portfolio may still deliver Islamic teachings provided they do not touch on political matters.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Bila beli atau jual kereta di Custom, setiap kereta diperiksa secara terperinci dan dibaik pulih. Rasa macam pandu kereta baru.
Kehidupan orang memang susah. Tak ada pekerjaan. Semua serba kekurangan. Jadi mereka mengharapkan bantuan luar.
Welcome back. Hundreds of thousands more people were ordered to stay home in northern China as authorities raced to contain a surge in COVID-19 cases. The city of Xi'an tightened its lockdown measures and launched a new round of mass virus testings after daily infections went beyond 150 3 days in a row.
The latest outbreak has pushed China's daily cases to a 21-month high. 175 infections were reported in Xi'an on Monday, up from 162 on Sunday. Since December 23rd, China has put the city of 13 million people under lockdown. Households were allowed to send one member to shop for necessities every 2 days when the lockdown was imposed last week. But starting from Monday, residents have been barred from leaving their houses except to take virus tests.
Meanwhile, Australia reported a record high of over 11,000 new cases today as the Omicron variant disrupted plans to reopen the economy. 5 COVID deaths were also reported, but authorities did not specify whether any of these new deaths were related to Omicron.
Experts say Omicron is more transmissible but less virulent than previous strains. It began to spread in Australia just as the country planned to reopen for good after nearly 2 years of on and off lockdowns. International border remains effectively closed, but Australian nationals can return without mandatory hotel quarantine, while certain skilled workers and foreign students would also be allowed in.
The British government will not be introducing fresh COVID restrictions in England ahead of New Year's Eve. This is despite the country reporting a record rise in daily cases over the weekend.
Health Secretary Sajid Javid, however, did not rule out the possibility of further measures in January, which will depend on latest data. England reported a record number of new COVID cases on Christmas Day of over 113,000. COVID hospitalizations in England are also at the highest level since March, but numbers needing critical care is not nearly as high as it was in January this year.
Japan's government mapped out a plan for releasing contaminated water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea. It included compensation standards for local industries and safety assessment reports.
Early this month, the plant's operator, Tokyo Electric Power, outlined detailed plans for the disposal, including building an underwater tunnel to release the water. Japan said in April it would discharge more than 1 million tons of treated contaminated water beginning spring 2023. The move has provoked concerns from local fishermen and objections from neighboring China and South Korea. In an effort to improve transparency to gain the trust of the international community, Japan asked the International Atomic Energy Agency to conduct a review to assess and advise on the handling of the water.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and the Astro AWANI app. I'm Farhana Sheikh. We'll see you again.